Welcome to Shadowbox Decision Games, Warfighters Edition. I am John Schmidt, the host of Shadowbox Decision Games. We're here today to discuss Midnight at the Oasis, which is the fifth in the Warfighters series. Shadowbox Decision Games is the site devoted to helping practitioners exercise their tactical decision-making skills under stress and advancing tactical thought in general. And today we're honored to be joined by Vinton Bruton, Marine Infantry Officer. Vinton, you received your commission in 1998. You served in 1st Battalion, 4th Marines. You deployed to Iraq with Regimental Combat Team 2, and you commanded Delta Company 4th LAR in 4th Marine Division. You're now a professor of leadership, excuse me, and the director of the Wilson Center for Leadership in the Public Interest at Hampton-Sydney College. Tell us a little bit about Hampton-Sydney College and about the Wilson Center in particular.
Yeah, Hampton-Sydney shares the same birthday as the Marine Corps, 10 November 1775. It's small, under 1,000 students, very liberal arts, broad educational focus, all men's college. Made a decision in the 90s to stay as a men's college. That's a unique educational environment. Small classes, really strong brotherhood, really enjoy it. I've been there just a couple years, and I'm building up the experiential aspects of our leadership development. It's been a strong program for a lot of years at the Wilson Center. Wilson Center is named for a guy named Sam Wilson, who is a retired Army officer, Lieutenant General, who's from the area that Hampton-Sydney's in, served in Merrill's Marauders in World War II, went on to this incredible career as a FAO and as a intelligence guy and as a early special operator, and then in his retirement was president of the college. So everything we do is designed to just be in keeping with his legacy, and that's the public interest aspect. Is there's a big citizenship aspect and patriotism in keeping with his legacy.
It sounds like a unique experience. There can't be a lot of all men's colleges left in the United States anymore.
No, I believe there's three. So,
and you said you are emphasizing the experiential aspect. So do you use tactical decision games?
I do. I kind of think of it as a spectrum with tactical decision games on one end of the spectrum. And then I made my call sign today Sawtooth because in a couple weeks I'm off to the Sawtooth Mountains with a group of students for a 10-day backpacking leadership expedition where they'll have like 24 hours where they're in charge of the trip,
right?
Things like that. So I try to I really believe that leadership has to be experienced and learned. It can't be a lecture-based course. And so one of the things I like about tactical decision games, and I tend to just call them leadership decision games in our program, is, you have to make decisions in the face of uncertainty, clearly and convincingly communicate your plan, and then defend it. And you learn a lot in that process. So.
Very good. I could not provide a better description of the utility of tactical decision games. So thank you for that. Let's get into Midnight at the Oasis. And before I do, I just want to ask you, did you pick up on the pop culture reference in the title?
No, I did not.
So you're too young. In the early 1970s, there was a really cheesy pop song called Midnight at the Oasis about this sort of love affair that took place at this oasis. It was really, really bad. But I just, for some reason, these ridiculous things stick in my head. It was probably in 8th grade when the song came out. So as I was putting this together, I just thought Midnight at the Oasis. Anyway, what I'm going to do for those of our listeners who have not read the scenario on the Substack, I will summarize it real quickly. In this scenario, you are a tank and mechanized battalion task force commander. The year is 2031, so it's slightly near future. And you command, in your battalion, you have a scout platoon, and you have 4 companies. You have a regular tank company, you have two mechanized rifle companies, and you have a robotic or unmanned tank company as well. That's slightly less capable. The guns are slightly smaller caliber, and the armor is offers less protection. But it's essentially a second tank company. So that's and you've got a mortar platoon. So that's what you've got in your organization. And you know what? Um, I should open up my thing there. So you've got Bravo Company is a mechanized rifle company. Alpha Company is your tanks. Delta Company is your robotic tanks. You got a mortar platoon. You've got Charlie Company is another mechanized rifle platoon here, and then you've got your scouts, um, who are up in front of you. So anyway, the situation is that you're about to launch into the attack and you're moving to your assembly area that's just west of the oasis called Eotib, right? And you're going to be in the early morning hours, you're going to be attacking across Wadi Kabir, which is controlled by friendly forces. And then the 71st Company is holding Allegheny Crossing, which is the crossing site that you're going to use. And so you're going to launch into the attack. And as you're moving into your assembly area just east of Eotib, you discover that your UAV, you got a UAV up, and your UAV, I'm going the wrong way here. Here we go. Your UAV picks up some vehicles in Eotib, unspecified combat vehicles in Eotib, pointed east, though, pointed back towards you, a dozen of them. More vehicles entering Eotib from the west, that is, from the direction of Allegheny Crossing. And then just then your scout platoon reports that they've come into contact with a hostile force estimated to be an armored reconnaissance company about a kilometer east of Eotib. And your scout platoon is now falling back under fire, under pressure, hooking north to get out of the line of fire there, from this hostile force that they've contacted. So you've got this report of a company-sized force east of Eotib. Your UAV has spotted more armored vehicles in Eotib and more coming into Eotib from the west. And then your UAV goes down, by the way. And so that's the situation. What are you going to do? So you were the commander. What was your read on the situation, and what did you do about it?
Yeah, so a lot of uncertainty about who actually is in Eotib. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yep. Yep.
Um, there's part of me that wants to think, hey, that's my allied force. Why are they back here instead of at the Wadi? But given that they are in contact with, I mean, they're shooting it out with my scout platoon, I felt like I had to communicate that as, hey, these are enemies. So um, the other thing that is interesting is they're not in a very defensible spot. Like the enemy's in a bad area. I don't know what the civilian population is of that little crossroads, but they don't appear to be in a good defensive position.
Mhm.
Other things that popped out to me, like I think we called them Seifs, Seifs.
Yep.
Be pronouncing that wrong. I don't know if it's Seifs, but the big sand dunes with kind of knife edges that are labeled there and with letters. I thought,
Right.
okay, those are great on a lot of levels. I mean, cover and concealment, at least for companies behind those. I mean, they're long. They're 3,000 and 4,000 meters long. And then also really good target reference points, it seems like, as I coordinate things. So my read of the situation is I don't know where the 71st Company is, and I don't think that's them in Eotop. And I think that separated me from some other people who assumed other. But I mean, I started off my order with, hey, task force, there's an enemy company in Eotop. They've engaged our scout platoon. The scouts are withdrawing north around Saif G. Uh, Position of the 71st Company is unknown,
Hmm.
but assume the company in Eotib is not them. And we're going to destroy this enemy force. I told the scout platoon, hey, you have mortar priority of fire. By the way, it was interesting to think about. I mean, you gave us a range of 10 kilometers for the mortars, which is a long way. And that was great. So use it to suppress and disrupt the enemy company while we establish a defense, get east of Saif G, stay out of friendly fire, screen our northern flank.
Right.
So I made Alpha Company, who are the tanks. I made them the main effort.
Hmm.
Said establish an attack by fire position south of Route Allegheny and east of Sife A. Keep fires west of Sife G, where the scout platoon is located. So
Right. So
not
deconflicting
exactly.
fires there, using really distinguishable terrain to deconflict fires. Yeah.
Yeah, that made it nice. Bravo Company, stop where you are, establish a blocking position oriented west on Route Allegheny. Charlie Company, you're the task force reserve. Send one platoon to reinforce Alpha Company.
Right.
And Delta Company, pass through Bravo Company, attack to destroy the enemy in vicinity of Eotib. And then mortars get fire cap now.
Right.
So that's my order in a nutshell. There's things I like about it and things I don't. Um,
Okay. Well, let's hear that.
yeah, so things that I like about it. Um, I like Alpha Company tanks being near that Sife, and I like that I attached a platoon of, you know, infantry fighting vehicles to them. I think that gives them a lot of options. They can use the infantry if they want on the Sife or to protect their southern flank. And if I decide to do something different, I've got, a quickly task organized force there that's combined arms. I like that I fire capped my mortars where they are. They can range a long way, almost, if not all the way to the Wadi, which I think is important. I believe they're 120 millimeter mortars.
Right. Right.
Um, the the geometry of fire is a little bit tight with Alpha Company and LA or my scout platoon, but the scout platoon is moving in the right direction to get out of the way, so that's good. Um, so those are the things. I mean, honestly, I think the geometry works, and I think it's a simple enough order to be understood. I brought this up. I did have this idea. It's like, hey, I've seen this before. And I mean, it's from back as a lieutenant, and that's been a long time, doing the Mastering Tactics workbook that you put.
Uh-huh.
And I remembered somewhere there was this thought in my head. It was like, I really need to be focused on the bridge at the Wadi and not the enemy. And I think it really is from, and I mean, this would be right out of the Gary Klein, John Schmidt, here's how your brain actually makes decisions, right? Is like you look back and what's the decision I've made that's most like this?
Right. Right.
And
You
so,
look for patterns. You look for patterns in
right.
human experience. That's Klein's recognition prime decision model. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting after the fact to think about that. But
So it didn't occur to you in the moment. It occurred to you afterwards.
I think it did. Honestly, I think it occurred to me in the moment. And I said, I should be more focused on the bridge, but then I didn't. And
Yeah.
I can defend that. I mean, honestly, and I don't know how much you want to go into this, but I went and looked back afterwards at the enemy in the assembly area one, and I think there's some really important differences. Um, so while I agree that checkpoint 10, the bridge over the Wadi, I mean, that's the key terrain, right? I mean,
Right.
what we've really got to worry about is not just an enemy mech company, but whatever's behind them. Um, and that could turn out really bad for us. But I think in this situation, the terrain is different. Uh, my task force is different in important ways. And you've got maybe the most important part is the uncertainty about who is actually in Eotib and where is the 71st company?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I loved that uncertainty piece of this because I think I mean, that's
So
what,
so I think you've nailed a really important part of it. So you're right. The scenario in Mastering Tactics is called Enemy Over the Bridge.
sorry, yeah.
EOTB, right? That's
Yeah.
that's that's what EOTB is. That's the Easter
Yeah.
egg that I planted there. In that scenario, your scout platoon run into enemy in your assembly area, but you also they run into an allied reconnaissance platoon that had been operating west of the river. In that
Right.
case, it's a river. Here, it's a wadi.
Right.
So I tried to create the same dilemma, but I tried to disguise it with some slightly different terrain and some slightly upgraded technology. But I was trying to recreate the same dilemma. But as you identified, I, I, I changed some things that I thought were inconsequential that actually turned out to be pretty significant. And one of them is that an enemy over the bridge, you're pretty certain that it's the enemy. Because
Right.
you run into an Allied reconnaissance platoon that was operating west of the river, got forced back across the river under enemy fire, said there's no friendly forces holding the river, and enemy forces have been coming across for the last 30 minutes. That's pretty conclusive. So you know that you're dealing with bad guys, right? And you know that the longer you wait to go to the bridge, the worse the situation is going to get because the enemy is just continuing to pour forces to your side of the river and create a potential bridgehead. So in my mind, I was creating the same thing, but I inadvertently created more uncertainty about the force in Eota, and a lot of people really focused on that. But in your decision, so it's interesting. You say that there was that level of uncertainty, and yet you pretty decisively acted against Eota. You didn't say, "Hey, let's figure out if it's friendly or enemy." You said, "I assume it's enemy. We're gonna destroy him."
Yeah, I feel like I needed to make a decision, either or, because I don't want my Marines wondering, but at the same time, I like needed them to know that this is an assumption, not a guarantee.
Right.
That way, if one of them realized, oh, that's the flag of our allies, or, I know
Or I
that,
recognize that vehicle type. Yeah.
right, they would speak up. So I almost felt like I thought that was an interesting leadership thing is like, I need to take responsibility for the action as the commander, but also need to let them know, hey, I'm not 100% that these are enemy there. So
Yeah.
that was a weird, I liked that part of the problem. I
What,
think,
so what about the terrain was different to you?
um, as I understood the original, you had a lot more vegetation out there, or at least a lot more
Oh
green.
yeah, there was. Yeah, it was your typical sort of forest land sort
Yeah,
of,
and so here, and also, you had hills, not seefs.
which could be occupied. Here, I made a point of
Right,
saying the seats really couldn't be occupied, at least by vehicles.
right,
Infantry could lug their equipment up there, but it would take a while. So
yeah,
the high ground was not nearly the key terrain that it was in Enemy Over the Bridge. It
right,
concealed you. Uh,
right.
it canalized movement, but it wasn't really key terrain that you could occupy and engage the enemy from very effectively.
Exactly. And I liked in this one, I felt like, okay, like um, can almost like play a game. Whereas if I can conceal my forces behind the Chiefs, um, I can pop out from those. I can use all my weapons almost to their max effective range. At least I've got the possibility of doing that. At the same time, I also think I'm going to be throwing up big dust clouds if I try to do an envelopment to the south or the north, and that might not be as uh, successful in achieving surprise as it might be in some other, situation. So, and then I was a mortar platoon commander, so I think about mortars and this kind of thing. I
Yeah.
really liked, I was like, hey, I can at least influence the bridge. Um, from near where I am. I'm probably a little over 10K away, and I'd be pushing max range. The other thing I thought about this situation, I mean, just the robotics, right? Just the, um, what do we call it? Autonomous gun platoon,
Right.
autonomous gun company, where you
Right.
get these 21 vehicles. I'm having a hard time visualizing them, right? Like
Yeah, I don't know what they would look like either,
yeah,
but we're heading there.
but yeah, I thought that part was great because I thought, well, how would I use these? And I didn't have a lot of time to analyze it. I mean, such is the nature of a decision game, but it's like, hey, I'm going to put them out there and see if they get shot, basically. I would not want to do that with my Marines, but I'm like, hey, I think it
Yeah.
was,
Oh,
I don't know
so
if,
one of the primary arguments for autonomous systems is you can send them into environments where you don't want to
yeah,
people because they're non-permissive environments. So I guess one way to try to clarify the situation with respect to this hostile force is send your autonomous system there, which has, by the way, automated target recognition, ATR, right? So presumably they're going to be able to identify the vehicles. which you would expect your scout platoon commander to be able to do, by the way. You would
Mhm.
expect him to be pretty proficient at identifying enemy vehicle types. So
Mhm.
um, you would have really hoped that you would have gotten a little more information from him about what he was dealing with. But anyway, yes, send your robotic system there to try to clarify that if you want. So as you identified, the key terrain is Allegheny Crossing at Wadi Kabir. So my thinking was try to just fix or contain the enemy in the vicinity of Eodib and do that with the minimal force I can, which in my mind is Bravo, because they're already in position to do that. So just hold your place and set up a blocking position, basically, and don't engage unless they engage you. And by the way, everybody, my CCIR is, who are these guys? Are these guys, in fact, the 71st Company doing something stupid or retreating or whatever? Or are they the enemy? I need to know that because everything sort of hinges on that, as you identified. But put Bravo there as a block. My scouts are heading this way anyway. Just have them continue to scout or reconnoiter around to the north to figure out what's the situation on the north side, and then take my um, take my Delta and Charlie companies as my main effort, swing them this way, go here. And I use my Delta for the same reason that you were thinking of using your robotics. That is, the situation's uncertain. I'd rather throw my robots into the uncertain situation rather than put my people at risk. And then use Alpha Company as my reserve. And I was thinking Alpha Company would be my reserve here,
Mhm.
at near vicinity of checkpoint 25. Um, because that would allow them to very quickly reinforce the main effort, reinforce Bravo if it becomes necessary, attack straight north into Eodib if that becomes an option that I want to do. And it also kind of protects this avenue of approach in case, in fact, it is the enemy that comes out at attacks south out of Eodib. I don't want them cutting off my forces, right? So I'm actually protecting my line of communication by putting my reserve in the south side to protect, but also to reinforce any of my other efforts. So that was my thinking. But I'm with you. The real sort of first consideration is what the heck is going on? Who are these guys? Because everything else is going to hinge on that. Normally, I would try to avoid sort of on order sorts of things. I actually included an on order for this attack on on checkpoint 10 on the crossing because I wanted to have clarification about who we were dealing with before I did that. So that's the reason I inserted an on order for that attack because I wanted to have some sort of fail safe where I had a way of shutting this thing off. But as you kind of alluded, I mean, you're doing all this in 5 minutes, right? I mean, so um, it's not like you could really think through all the implications of that very carefully and make a perfect plan here. You're throwing something together very quickly because it's a very time compressed situation. And the longer it takes you to act, the worse the situation gets because we get one way or the other, whether it's the 71st Company or it's the enemy. Apparently, there's nobody controlling the Wadi, and that's critical as you identified. So um, I loved it. I liked it. So you picked up on the Easter egg, though. You picked up that Eoda was enemy over the bridge.
Yep.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I should get a prize for that.
You
Did I
were
say,
nobody else did, by the way. You were the only
um,
person that wrote in for that.
so something I thought, I've probably like looked at this more after the fact than most TDGs. Like I feel like the value isn't, as you just said, it's not the perfect plan. It's can I make a good enough plan right now with the information I've got?
Mhm.
But something I found myself doing is thinking about like, I mean, in general, yeah, we want to control the crossing and keep the enemy on the other side. But if he starts piecemealing troops across it into our kill zone, that could also be really good for us, right? Like I think about given the train we're looking at here, we could use Ceph's B and E and our tanks especially, but not exclusively. I mean, we've got ATGMs and stuff to make that area between checkpoint 10 and 21 really bad for him
Right.
and do a lot of damage to his forces as they cross. I mean, they're not going to be able to roll right across the Wadi and they're going to have a hard time deploying effectively um, above the company level in that area, I would say.
So you're thinking that this becomes a kill zone.
Yeah.
So where do you position your forces to take advantage of that kill zone? Because the way you've got it laid out right now, I think um, you create sort of a really nice sort of L-shaped ambush almost,
Mhm.
and then a maneuver force attacking into it. How do you position your forces though to attack that kill zone west of Iota?
Well, almost feel like that's a stage two. Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a cop out. Like I'm not my, I think your plan or Brendan's plan, who is similar to yours but goes west,
Right. Yes.
right?
When we yeah, he had a similar plan to me,
Yeah.
and Brendan frankly recognized enemy over the bridge, I think, and
Yeah.
saw the pattern repeating here.
Yep. Like either of those probably addresses that issue better, right? Like if you've got your tank company down near checkpoint 25, um, I think you're hitting that kill zone better than I am. I do think that either my reserve, which was Charlie Company minus at this point, or Alpha Company reinforced, if depending on what happens with whoever this is in the OTIB, right, could move there and move there pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I think I've got what I like about my plan is I like my reserve and my flexibility. So
Yeah,
anyway,
and of course, I mean, why do you keep a reserve? You keep a reserve as a hedge against uncertainty. There's, and as you
Mhm.
said, there's a ton of uncertainty here. So keeping a reserve is critical to this scenario. Allows you to deal with whatever comes next, which you have no idea what that's going to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
I liked, and I mean, again, I think I remember this from Mastering Tactics. You talked about, your reserve doesn't have to be in the back, like in a traditional two up, one back, whatever. Like mine's in the back, but I love that yours is down there at checkpoint 25. I mean, a reserve needs to be where it can most effectively contribute when you need it to. So that's kind
Mhm.
of a cool
You
aspect of
have
it.
always made a point when you responded on Substack of saying, I did this within the time limit. And you've always mentioned that you felt the pressure of that. And I noticed I noticed that when you're typing it in, it takes you much longer than when you just give the order orally
Yeah.
because when you give the order orally, you just talk. When you type it in, even if you're doing it fast or quickly, you're still composing it first. And I remember when I did this one, I'm typing and I'm going really fast and I'm thinking, man, I'm really hauling butt. And I look at my watch and I'm like, you took 7 minutes. I'm thinking, how's that possible? It really is a short period of time, and you really, if you're doing it right, if you're not cheating and giving yourself 25 or 30 minutes to do it, you really are feeling the pressure of this, and invariably you're going to think afterwards, wow, there's some things I would have done differently if I'd had more time to think this through. But that's the reality of the
Yep.
situation, right? And that's sort of one of the arguments for doing these things in the first place is just by doing them again and again and again, you start to build up this database of patterns that you recognize that you no longer have to think your way through.
Mhm.
Right? You can just say, I've seen this before. I know how this turns out. I know what I got to do. And you don't have to rationalize it. That's kind of the whole point. And so this scenario, as I said, I tried to replicate enemy over the bridge. I've actually created the same dilemma probably 5 or 6 times in different TDGs to the point where it's now like an archetype in my mind. It's the bright and shiny object right in front of you versus the ultimately more important thing further away that nobody else knows about, right? In this case, the bright shiny object is the enemy or the hostile force anyway that's run into your scout platoon uh, that's in this place where you were told to go. But the ultimately more important thing is the bridge that nobody else apparently knows is unoccupied or unguarded. And so where should you really be going? What really matters here?
I would question, so generally I agree with that. I think this is more than a bright, shiny object in this case, because I think we have a responsibility to our commander to figure out just what is going on
Yeah.
there, right? Like if it was just an enemy, I agree. Like that's a bright, shiny object that is a distraction. But I think the uncertainty, it's almost like we have, we're not a reconnaissance troop, but we need to clarify that situation.
Yeah, yeah.
I think everybody
You
did
do that
that.
with one company? I mean, isn't Bravo
Yeah.
company enough?
Yeah, I think there were of all of the solutions I read, everybody did that. I mean, nobody just totally ignored it and said, "Hey, bypass criteria, go." I mean, um, including me. I think Delta Company is going to figure it out for me. That
Yeah,
was interesting, by the way, like thinking, how much do I trust this autonomous target recognition software
yeah.
versus, Lance Corporal Jones?
Yeah. So that's a great question. In fact, I'm working on a project right now that's all about trust in AI.
Mhm.
What does it take for humans to start to trust their AI systems, and what level of trust are they willing to give? Which is a really fascinating question. Absolutely. So you talked about you owe it to your higher commander. We didn't talk about what you're going to tell your regimental commander.
Yeah, and that was another one. That was the time limit thing. It was
Yeah.
like I flat ran out of time. Um, and I will say I think people get more out of these when they hold themselves to a very strict time
Oh
limit.
yeah, absolutely.
So I really try to do that just to get the benefit for myself. And so, I mean, I think I've got to tell him that I've almost got to just pass on to him the same situation that I just gave my task force, that my scout platoon is engaged, direct fire contact with a presumed enemy force in
On our side of the Wadi.
on our side of the Wadi, and that there's no sign of the 71st, and they are not controlling the Wadi. Now, I really got to think about how I phrase that, because depending on how much my commander trusts me, he might just put a full stop, be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, cause it's so easy to think, hey, this,
Yeah.
this, EOTIB, company size force is the 71st, but I don't think I can, like, I don't want him to tell me that. I want to figure it out, and I want to
Yeah.
figure it out in a way that poses the least risk to my troops. What I don't want him to do is say, "Hey, Bruton, stop where you are, until we figure this out."
Right, right, which
So,
is so easy for somebody to do, right? If I mean that's sort of a natural reaction to uncertainty is okay, I'll stop. Let me figure this out, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
And it's almost like,
Instead of you figure it out for me and let me know what the heck's going on.
yeah. So I'm going to tell him what I'm doing, not ask permission, like the lieutenant in the first one of these we did, which was you're out in front on the other side of this same wadi, I presume, uh,
Right.
and things like that. So it's a tough one. I mean, I think I'm really measuring my words with my boss and
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, I think this is enemy. They're engaged with me. I'm going to aggressively find out, but I've got a way to pull this back if it's friendly forces."
Yeah. Yeah. So your relationship with your CO is so important, the trust factor, which is why we call mission tactics trust tactics also.
Yeah.
Um, so you are a professor of leadership. If you were using this scenario as a case study in one of your leadership courses, what leadership lessons would you try to impart from this?
Yeah, so I think the first part is, as we've discussed, just making decisions in the face of uncertainty. I mean, that's just hard to do. I think, and TDGs are one of the absolute best ways to build that habit. And then the communication aspect both ways. What are you telling your higher? And then what
Right.
are you telling your subordinates? And then I think it's the responsibility piece. And I tried to walk this line in this, is that I am taking responsibility for the assumptions I'm making, right? I'm
Mhm.
assuming this to be the enemy force, that um, not the 71st. And so I don't want to ask my boss to take responsibility for that. Like, say, hey, what should I do? Like,
Right.
I've got more information than him. So I need to take the risk that's associated with that decision, and also want to take the burden off of my subordinates for that decision. I don't want to give them a lot of, hey, if they do this, then you do that, and tell me this. It's like, hey, I am making an assumption. It is an assumption. It's not a known fact. So I need you to kind of check my work, guys, but I am taking the moral responsibility for this decision. So I think those are things that would come up in that conversation in my class.
Very good. That's very cool. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. It went in some interesting directions. I have to say, I've authored so many TDGs over the years. I'm always surprised by them. And every time I do it, something new comes out that I hadn't seen before. So I've done Enemy Over the Bridge probably 100 times with different audiences, and like I said, I tried to recreate it here. Um, but you and I just talked about some things I think that have never come up before in that scenario anyway. So it's been really interesting. Vinton, I really appreciate it. Best of luck next week when you head to the wilderness with your students. Um, but anyway, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it. So to the listeners, I hope you've enjoyed it. I want to tell you, make sure to subscribe on YouTube or at warfighters.substack.com. Look for new scenarios every 3 or 4 weeks or so, as well as live TDGs for paid subscribers. If you've got TDGs of your own that you'd like to post, you can reach us at info@shadowboxtraining.com. If you're interested in learning more about what we do at Shadowbox, go to shadowboxtraining.com. Until next time, Vinton, thank you, and see you again. Thanks a lot.